بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue in this lesson by the great Imam al-Hafiz Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, in his book entitled Buloogh al-Maraam, which is translated, or when translated means obtaining the objective. And his name was Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, who died 852 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As the time now is 4:43 p.m., Saturday, June the 3rd, 2023, which coincides with the Hijri calendar of today being Saturday, the 14th of the month of Dhul Qa'dah, which is the month before the Hijjah, before the month of Hajj. In the year is 1444 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As we discussed the first narration in this chapter of marriage, where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the advice to the youth, even though it was addressed to the ummah generally, from his time and those who follow him, all the way to the day of resurrection. So you notice that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam gave them advice based upon the fact that we know that youth is when the desires reach its peak. They start and then they, of course, augment until the point they become very strong. And that is the nature or the natural disposition or inclination of every human being. Once they reach the state of adolescence, then they get desires. Those desires you'll find that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had taken in consideration. Where he said, as we talked about in the hadith last class, Ya ma'ashar shabab man istata'a minkum al-ba'a. O group of youth, who from amongst you has what they call al-ba'a. That ba'a, as we talked about last class, is kulaf al-zawaj. Kulafu al-zawaj, meaning they have the monetary capability, which is included in that is of what? Of physical ability. What? Physical ability along with what? Monetary ability, in which, like we said, brothers and sisters, is something that where one has to have. They are the essential affairs of marriage, where one, of course, has the earnings, so they have the spendings, and based upon that, put a chair in front of him for me. This is sutra. بعد الراجح السطرة واجبة. Like we said, everyone, that the spendings is what's incumbent upon an individual when he wants to embark upon this affair of zawaj. We talked about the details in this regard as far as our youth, that you'll find that the current state of affairs, you'll find that the majority of our youth, especially in the, if you want to say 15 or 16 or 20 or early 20s, in regards to the males. As we know that the males are the ones that embark upon this affair. Take in consideration the circumstances of the land, where you'll find, like we said, economically within the lands, they try to make everything equal. And you'll find as a result of it, like we said, the way things are set up here is set up in a manner you'll find, like we said, where a lot of women have stronger financial affairs, more in order or stable than a lot of the men these days, especially in this land. We're not talking about the countries and other foreign countries, we're talking about specifically here. Based upon that, that still does not give an excuse for men to now be neglectful, as we talked about, taking advantage of women, and to the point you'll find that the ideas that certain people put in their minds, like this is what you're supposed to do. you're supposed to be spending on me. Meaning, you've been given an opportunity of financial stability, and you're supposed to give that to me. And all this is from, like we said, from this country of giving the entitlement type of issues that we have as people generally, where the entitlement issue has reached something of what we want to say the most highest extent, where people are overly entitled, and to the point where the ahkam of Islam becomes switched, and this is where all the chaos starts to creep in our relationships. But however, what we wanted to take in consideration, as we mentioned last class, that the youth, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu who those who have kulaf al-zawaj, meaning that they have the earnings or the spendings, then the Messenger of Allah advised by saying, فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ, let him get married. Well, we know al-asl fi amr al-rasul al-wujub, that the origin and the command of the Messenger of Allah is an obligation. That's what one would extract from this narration here. That the Messenger of Allah commanded, that who has the kulaf al-zawaj, that whoever has the financial ability, or the monetary ability to marry, then let him get married. You will find from Ahl al-Ilm that do mention that it is an obligation to marry. It is an obligation. But we said last class that they break down into those categories according to the individual. According to the individual. As we'll talk about again, and we'll just reiterate a little bit what we had spoken about last class in a minute. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he advised the children or the youth of those who their desires has reached its peak and it's become very strong. He advised them with these affairs. Like, oh youth, either you get married if you have the ability. Like I said, we gave the exception of what we said last class. We talked about a little bit of detail where a lot of our youth don't have the financial ability, even though their desires are being what? Constantly aroused, especially in this land, because we live in a very promiscuous land. And not it's only become here in America, it's become widespread all over the dunya, based upon the internet and based upon social media, that all the affairs of what you want to say, oversaturation of sexual arousal has now enveloped the dunya, based upon all these different types of wasa'il, all these different types of methods in which the lines of communication or to send something of a picture or message or video is in a split of a second. As a result of it, when a person looks at it, shaitan is able to what? Poison someone's mind, poison someone's heart, and even poison their desires. Meaning that their desires are utilized in a very perverted way, in a very what? Illicit, satanic way. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has what? Given the human being shahwa. That's something natural. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's boundaries to how you're supposed to what? Utilize it. Allah has given you boundaries. However, we said based upon these days, you'll find that a lot of the youth are being bombarded with affairs that constantly what? Arouse them sexually. And it's not just sexual arousal, it's an oversaturation of it. Based upon the fact, like we said, our youth and our young ones, we try to help them and accommodate them. They don't have the financial ability, usually at 17 and 18, to fully take care of a household. That's why we mentioned in the last class, we highly advise the parents to come together from the families of the sister and the brother, if she has a Muslim family, or has a family at all, or he has a family at all. But the origin is, as Muslim parents, we try to come together and we try to accommodate them based upon the fact that a male at the age of 17 and 18 cannot take care of a household fully. That's the certain reality. Do you know anybody, especially these days, except a few exceptions, that could be a 17 or 18-year-old that can fully take care of a family at that age, financially? No. The answer is no. So based upon that, then you'll find that a lot of our youth is saying basically we're what? I want to get married based upon the fact that I see constantly women, promiscuous women, dressed in all types of ways, shapes, sizes, all these affairs that I'm constantly being bombarded with, that's constantly arousing me sexually. So what do? Based upon that, we try to what? Accommodate them. As parents, we said, and I gave an example. The daughter could stay with the parents and the son could stay with his. You can get married and then go out and take your time. You do not have to get pregnant the first night. I don't know where the Muslims get this from. You do not have to get pregnant the first night or the first week. I don't know where they get that from. I don't know what's the delil for that. I'm still trying to find it. I know a lot of in our community thinks once you get married, you're supposed to get pregnant that same night. Where did you get that from? So this is what I'm saying, everyone. Take your time, let them get married, and even if they have to stay in their parents' home, at least you could say, I tried to help and protect my child from falling into something displeasing to Allah. And I did the best that I could in my ability. So on the day of resurrection, I could say I did what I was supposed to do. I tried to accommodate them. I tried to save them. I tried to maintain their chastity as best in the best way I could. If they go outside it and exceed the bounds, at the end of the day, you can say, I tried to fear Allah by fulfilling my responsibility with my Lord in regards to trying to enable them and facilitate for them marriage in the best shape and form, even though I know that my son did not have it at that time. Is it clear, everyone? So that's the exception that we mentioned here, last class in brief. This is what we said. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Even though the asl is what's in the hadith. Because during the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, men were different. Men, their maturity evolved very quickly, along with women also. Women were very mature at an early age too. They knew how to be women at 11, 12, 13, and earlier than that. And men knew how to also attain financial gain or profit even in a young age. So based upon that, this is what we're aiming to strive towards what? Actualizing here. This is the goal here. O youth, who from amongst you has khulaf az-zawaj, the earnings and the spendings, then get married. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised to get married, not to perform or indulge in illicit, immoral, perverted acts of sexuality. No. Why? Because those affairs will what? Those affairs will anger Allah. And as a result of it, Allah's wrath descends upon the human being. And if Allah's wrath descends upon any of us, you will not succeed in your life. So this is what we're mentioning here. So the Messenger of Allah said, let him get married. Ahl ilm say that the origin of this affair or this word, how the Messenger of Allah used it, is a command. فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ. Let him get married. Then it says at the end of the hadith, the fa'ida, which is what? فَإِنَّهُ غَضُّ لِلْبَصَرِ وَأَحْصَنُ لِلْفَرْجِ وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَيْهِ بِالسَّوْمِ فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاء. He says, the goal is what, everyone? The goal is what? Verily, it will allow one to lower his or her gaze. And it will be a means of protection for the private part. And whoever is not able from amongst you, then let him fast. For verily, it will be a wija. A wija, as we'll talk about, means khisab, means a form of castration. But it's not an actual castration, but it's the effect of what castration does, which is to what? Sever the desires or lower them. طيب. What we said last class, just to sum it up, we said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ saw the goal of zawaj, especially during the time of one's youth, where their desires reach, like we said, their apex, or they peak in their, as they say, thawaran, or their the strength of those desires peak at this age. As a result of it, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ didn't say in the hadith, it will be a means for attaining abundance of children in the beginning. So based upon that, so you'll find based upon that, majority of the children, of course, or excuse me, not children, I shouldn't say, excuse me, youth who reach the state of adolescence and beyond that, majority of them, of course, in that particular time, in their age, they're marrying in order to what? Attain, number one, security of falling into something that is illicit or immoral. Which is what? Number one, which is to protect one's chastity, or to protect their desires, or to protect what they look at. So, that's the first goal. It's protecting your what? Your chastity, and to protect your private part. and to protect what you look at. That's why you'll find even Ibn Uthaymeen, he mentions this in this explanation right here. He says, وَلِهَذَا تَجِدُ الَّذِينَ يُهَنِّئُونَ بِالزَّوَاجِ لَا يَتَبَادَرُ إِلَىٰ أَذْهَانِهِمْ أَنَّهُمْ يُهَنِّئُونَهُ بِأَنَّهُ وجد حرثا يبذل فيه ويكون له أولاد بل ربما يقولون له تريث في الإنجاب لمدة سنتين أو ثلاث أو أربع. He says you'll find that the majority of those who congratulate, of course, when they congratulate one, when they marry, that the first thing comes to their mind is that they're what? They're congratulating him or her because now they found what they call a harvest, meaning what they can now plant their seed in so they can now start what? Reproduction. That's really not the case in the idea in the beginning, inshallah. Where the person now is what? Expecting children immediately. Why? Now listen what he says clearly. He says, because you'll find that they say in the beginning, wait before you start having kids. Tarayath fil injab. Wait to start having kids. You might want to start for what? 2 years, 3, 4. Why? Because they're what? They're getting to know one another. They're getting acquainted. Find if they have compatibility. Who wants to get married the first night they're pregnant or the first week, and then you find out 2 weeks you're apples and oranges. Now you just came with a layer of problems, accumulated layer of problems. Then you find the person divorces. Now you have to be with that woman and that man for the rest of your life. Y'all have some type of ties. Even if you're divorced, you have a ties with that person. Why? You have a child with them. Based upon that, a person will what? Can wait. Not immediately as soon as you marry. It's incumbent upon one to start having children. Like we said, one can wait. You do have the option. If you want to, you're hur. You're free to do what you want. However, like we said, especially taking consideration the circumstances here in America, people who usually get married, they're going through the masajid, right, everyone? That's the predicament. You're going to the masjid. The wakil is the one who's what? Marrying the people off. He does not have a total what? A total, complete, if you want to say, knowledge of that state of that person religiously or mentally or psychologically to the end of it. He doesn't. He's doing based upon what's in the best of his ability, what he's working with. So basically, just to sum it up, everyone, you're marrying someone that you don't know her and she don't know you. And in this instance, like we said, we're not extreme. We are not telling people to date at all before the marriage. That's haram. And that's going to lead to other atrocities. And that's going to lead to other major sins and other satanic affairs. We're talking about after the marriage. There's nothing wrong with taking it slow because you don't know the person. You don't know their psychological state. You don't know if y'all compatible. You don't know this individual, what type of person they are religiously. You don't know what type of person they are as far as what will make you happy. All those matters. You don't know. And like we said, certain people's personalities don't mesh. That happens. And in certain people, Allah just didn't put it in your chest to like that person. Who knows? Like we said, marriage is a nasib. Sometimes Allah unites the hearts, and sometimes Allah, well, two people are good people, but they just don't mesh. It happens. They just don't get along. All those probabilities are there. We can alleviate the problems based upon what? Taking your time. Getting to know the person. Getting to know them on a more what? Intellectual level. When I say intellectual, meaning mental compatibility. To see if you like their mind. We know during the sit down, of course, you're going to see whether or not you're physically attracted to them. So you'll know that's already there. So when you're now having a general acquaintance with them, you're going to see them visually. You say, okay, mashallah, the sister's attractive, the brother's attractive. Okay, that's a start. All right, after the marriage, take it slow. Don't let your desires overcome you. Get to know them on a what? On a mental compatibility, because strong men, real intelligent men, you have to get into their mind. And when I say that, I don't mean that in an evil way. I mean that in a positive way. You have to give them mental stimulation. You have to give them that. And you have to be able to arouse them in a manner that's not sexual, in another way. Because there's going to be times where it's not always going to be sexual attraction there, meaning sometimes your sexual attraction will go down when you become pregnant. Certain men, like we said, take consideration. This is how men's minds work. Certain men, they are able to be with their wife and might become more attracted to them when they're pregnant. Some men, it's the opposite. Certain men, it's the opposite. That's the reason why. And if you want to say the reality is, you're going to get older. All of us are going to get older, men and women. So you have to have something there that's way more valuable than just mere sex. So you can grow old and the relationship will still be what? Strong. That's where the mental stimulation and the other affairs and the other qualities take place, which is religion. Religion. That person is God-fearing, and that's a turn-on. For anybody who's trying to fear Allah, knowing that their practice of religion is a turn-on. It turns you on. And that a person is not practicing their religion, it's a turn-off. I don't want to be with a person that don't want to pray, don't want to properly have manners, knowing how to properly deal with people, how to deal with problems, issues, all those things and those factors you pencil in, and it makes the relationship stay what? Strong. So it's just not a relationship based upon what? Sexuality. Because as you age, those affairs are going to what? Eventually they're going to what, everyone? They're going to become a little weaker as you get older. And we know the mentality of men. Usually after sex is over, what? You start analyzing everything else about it now. The sex is out the way. All right, now I'm going to start really looking at you. Are you a good mother? Do you have manners? Do you know how to speak to people? Do you know, you start looking for other things now. So that's the things that we are trying to what? Give advice in order to keep the marriages having longevity and not just having years, but having beneficial, fruitful years. Because everybody out here can say, I have what? We have years. We got 40 years, 50 years in. Yeah, well, you 40 years or 50 years in happy? That's the question. That a lot of people don't what? Don't know if they can answer that question. Nobody just wants to have years. You understand? They want to have fruitful years, beneficial years, to say that this is actually a what? A genuine, good relationship, even though it's not based upon what? Sex. Sex was during the early stages, when we were younger. As you get older, it dies down a bit. It dies down, so there has to be something else there to maintain your what? To you to be intrigued and be into the person. That's where your mind comes in. And that's where your brain comes in. And that's what I'm saying to the sisters. You have to get inside a man's mind and intrigue him mentally. Mentally and what? Religiously. You have to intrigue him. If you don't, it's just going to be based upon sex. And that's when he gets to a certain point, the relationship is going to dissolve. And he's going to be like, you know what? I'm out. Because I'm not mentally into you like that. And the same thing with the brothers in regards to women. Women get turned off too. And when we get to the point, I'm going to explain that. Yes, men don't think you get mentally turned off. Women get mentally turned off. They do. Especially when men start acting like emotional wrecks, where they don't know how to control their mouth and sometimes just keep their mouth shut and walk away. Especially sometimes when women are acting in certain ways because they might be on their time during their month or their cycle or something, and you just close your mouth. That's one of the most strongest characteristics that a man can have with a woman is to shut your mouth and walk away. That is more of a controlling, respectable characteristic than you being combative with her verbally. It's clear. I don't care what you do. You go back and forth. Once that voice gets raised and you start being combative with a woman, that respect level is going down, 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 down. The best way you can put a person in their place is to what? Keep your mouth shut and walk away sometimes. And then, if you know, in a manner, to let them know, listen, I don't put up nobody, male or female, hollering at me. You talk to me respectfully, and that's it. Let's discuss it. All the other street nonsense and all the cursing and screaming, all that stuff from the manners of the people of the hellfire, leave it. Because I don't accept it. Because I don't use that language. So I expect it from you the same thing. Is it clear, everyone? That's how you put people in their place. And if they don't, they still want to be ignorant, bye-bye. That's it. It's time where all this stuff that we learned on TV and from the nonsense from the streets, you have to put it under your feet. This stuff has gotten us nowhere, and it's pathetic, and it is unacceptable Islamically. And it's displeasing to Allah to have this type of conduct and behavior, because we know one of the most greatest, rather, the people who have the highest houses and homes in paradise is those who have the best etiquette and manners. As the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that we talked about last class. So let's keep going. So, the affair of what? Marriage is to what, everyone? Allow one to lower their gaze. It's to protect yourself. And it's a shield. So, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ advised where he said that the last part of the hadith, what did he say, everyone? وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ. Whoever is not able, then upon him is to fast. Upon him is to fast. So, based upon the youth in that particular age, or that particular stage, where their desires, like we said, has reached its peak, the Prophet ﷺ said, if Allah's not facilitating it, maybe it's a reason. Maybe Allah's trying to save you from something. Maybe you find a difficulty in that particular situation because it's not for you. It might damage your religion. It might damage you as a person. So, maintaining your religion at that time from the other options that the Messenger of Allah gave, which is what, everyone? فَلْيَزَمِ الصَّوْمِ. He says, now it's incumbent upon you to what? Fast. Fast from time to time. You'll find that Ahl Ilm also mention, especially in these days, try as much as you can to minimize all those places that will subject you to arousing your desires. If you find that you are being tempted for all those different avenues, such as TikTok and all those other don't forget to pray to that catch. And all those other avenues where it's being a fitna, where it's arousing your desires and it's arousing your thoughts. And it's making your thoughts think in a manner that's perverted, in a perverted way. Then it's incumbent upon you to what? Shut it. Close it. As much as one is able. To minimize that affair will now minimize the thought process, because that's where the atrocities start. They start from where, everyone? It starts from the thoughts. It starts from the thoughts and then the heart. Then you want to actualize and carry out what you think physically. But the affair of the poison of shaitan, his arrows, start at what your eyes look at. Either through TikTok, social media, Instagram, and all those other pictures and videos where the image is going right in your eyes, going to your heart, poisoning in it. Then that's when the thought process comes. The thought process of what I can do, what I can do, and what I want to carry out, and what I want to actualize. All those matters, like we said, are affairs, like we mentioned, that goes against this hadith. The mere fact that when you fast, you know that you have to now lower your gaze from what is what? Impermissible or forbidden. Because we know from the greatest of fasting is not just from what, everyone? Abstaining food and drink. It's also abstaining from what is forbidden in words, actions, and speech, and what you look at and what you listen to. Rather, you'll find during the month of Ramadan, that is the actual true fasting. After you abandoning food and drink. The greatest of all tests is to what? Make sure that you're using the faculties of the body of hearing and seeing what pleases Allah. So it's not just food and drink you're abstaining from. You're abstaining from, You're abstaining also from what, everyone? All those acts and statements and what you look at and what you listen to that also displeases Allah. That's the true fasting that Allah wants from the believers, and He wants from the mu'mineen. So that's the reason why the Messenger of Allah in this hadith advised that a person fast if they're not married. Because like we said, it is a form of what they call khisa or khasi. Khasi is basically is the meaning of castration, to castraterize. But it doesn't mean it if in reality, more in the meaning. Like fasting is a form of castration, meaning what? It takes away the desires momentarily. It takes away the desires. That's all. Not literally cutting your private part off. But he's talked about, what, everyone? He's talked about how it just cuts the desires as far as in the meaning, they're similar. طيب. The last part of the hadith the last part, and we'll stop, inshallah. When the Messenger of Allah said, let him get married. As we said, وَاللَّامْ لِلْأَمْرِ وَالْأَصْلُ فِي الْأَمْرِ الْوُجُوبِ وقد ذهب كثير من أهل العلم إلى أن القادر على الزواج يجب عليه يتزوج. And I just mentioned that. They said that from Ahl al-Ilm, that say for the person who's able monetarily to get married, it's obligatory. So that is a statement. However, we said in these days, a lot of those affairs you'll find where there's an oversaturation of sexual stimulation, which necessitates that it's obligatory for people to get married, especially in these lands. If the people don't get married in these lands, they are more succumb towards what? Immoral, illicit relationships. And we're trying to, like we said, minimize, and if the goal is to totally what? Take it away fully. Because those matters is what's destroying society. Because it would dissolve the domestic affairs or the family matters. Whereas, like we said, children are being born out of wedlock. And the blessing of Allah is being removed from those families as a result of these type of what? Acts. So, the message of Allah sallallahu based upon the fact that you'll find that Ahl Ilm say this obligatory to get married. However, like we said, from them that said it's according to the individual. Some of them, as in regards to them, is highly recommended. Some of them, like we said, it's obligatory. And some of them, it's other than that, as we just said last class. So, this is from the Sunan of the Prophets. And then we know that the Prophets and Messengers are from those who marry. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu also married. And he had more than one wife, of course. And there was prophets before that had more than one wife. So this is a matter that's been established in history. And amongst the non-Muslims from those who are upon correct faith or those who are upon deviation as far as in regards to disbelief and polytheism. This was an affair that was known amongst all of society, that men, of course, married women, women only. And in addition to that, plural marriage was something acceptable and known. It wasn't never nothing weird. It wasn't nothing strange. It was something that was known. It was established. Nobody had a problem with it. No matter what they were, Muslim or non-Muslim or polytheist. Rather, the polytheists had the worst type. Because they had no what? They had no boundary on the number of how many you can marry. They had the worst type, the people of Kufr. Because you can marry 10, 20, 30, 40 years, no boundary. Islam came and put a what? A cap on it. And it made it more what? Organized. And it made it more what? It made it more systematic in regards to who you can marry, who you can't. Because we know still to this day, from those people upon Kufr, from the different deviant sects and milal, that they can marry some of them their daughters. And we talked about in the ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made all these type of affairs forbidden. So Allah came with the clarity within His book to tell us who we can marry and who we can't. Everything has been what? Laid out clearly. Of those affairs that are permissible, and those affairs, like we said, that will be a means to uniting people, and that we know the unification of family starts with the what? The immediate family structure. And that zina and fornication and adultery, and now the bar has been raised to the point of homosexuality and all those other matters, has been a reason for the destruction of families. And from minimization of what? Of now making civilization less. Because now once a person becomes homosexual or lesbian and the likes, you'll find that the percentage of humanity is going to start to go becoming lower and lower and lower. And that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is for what? The ultimate goal is for population control. That's it. Because men, if they become desire to another man, and a woman has become desire for another woman, there will be less what? People reproducing. There'll be less reproduction. And that's what the goal is, ultimately. And economically. And I want to talk about that later. Economically also. It's also the reason why they're pushing LGBTQ. It's an economical goal behind it also. But I don't have time to talk about it. They just put it amongst us as something desirable. Amongst them is something greater. They have a greater goal. They just want to leave you stupid. Yeah, you practice it. Go ahead, y'all stupid people underneath us. On the rich people, it's something else greater behind it. Something economical, of money that's involved. But if you just want to just be gay, just to be gay, go ahead. Okay. At the end of the day, you're going to see what? The detriments of it, which you see now. You see the detriments of it in society right now. طيب, so that's the last part, and we'll start the next hadith, next class. What's the next hadith, everyone? We'll stop here, inshallah. The next one is those three men that came to the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. The three men that came to him upon Anas ibn Malik. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. Anas ibn Malik. Radiyallahu an, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حمد الله وأثنى عليه وقال لكني أنام عفوا ولكني أنا أصلي وأنام وأصوم وأفطر وأتزوج النساء فمن رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. Where the Messenger of Allah talked about those men. Another narration it says, we'll talk about how the three men came to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ saying, Who are we in regards to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and he has his sins forgiven from the past and from what will come. So now I will what? I will pray all night and I will not sleep, and I will fast and I will what? And I will continue to do it and I will not break it. Meaning I will continue to fast every day and do way more. And another one said, of course, I will stay and pray every night, of course. And another one said that he wanted to practice what? Being like the priest, which is what do they call it when they don't marry women? There's a certain word for it in English. When a person doesn't marry, he becomes what's the name? What's the word of it? Celibate. Ahsant. Becoming celibate. So the man said, I would not get married at all. So the Messenger of Allah, and there's another narration said that the man came and said to the Messenger of Allah, I won't eat meat. I will never eat meat. That is a narration. So the Messenger of Allah had what? He had admonished him and said, number one, that affair is not acceptable. He says, me, I pray at night, and I what? And I go to sleep. He said, and I fast, and sometimes I what? I fast and I break my fast. And we know the narrations where the Messenger of Allah one time, for a period of time, he used to fast so much they thought he would what? Never stop. Then there'll be a period of time where he what? He would not fast until the point we will ask, when will he start fasting again? To let you know how balanced our religion is. Right? Then the other man said, the Messenger of Allah said, I marry women. Whoever desires other than my sunnah, is not from me. Whoever desires other than my sunnah, he's not from me. And like we said, this is a warning, especially for those who want to be celibate. It's unacceptable in the religion of Islam to practice that. And we'll talk about the other hadith of the Messenger of Allah where he said about the affairs of a person being celibate, how it's rejected, and the hadith that we're going to discuss next class about the people who's called the Rahbaniyat al-Nasara. And this comes in the next class, where it says, and I'll just mention the hadith quickly. He said, تزوجوا الولود والودود فإني مكاثر بكم الأمم يوم القيامة ولا تكونوا كرهبانية النصارى. When that wording has also been authenticated by the great Imam al-Albani. He said, marry, of course, the loving women and the fruitful ones that can what? Bear children. For verily, I will be the majority of the greatest of the nations, meaning as far as in followers, in number, on the day of resurrection. And he said, don't be like the celibacy or the practice of the Christians. Don't do it. لا تكونوا كرهبانية النصارى. So that's a warning to let you know that being celibate is what? Rejected. It's not permissible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in his book, the Surah Al-Hadid, where he said about the Christians, and if you want to say for those who are more involved in Catholicism, who are Catholics, he said they made obligatory something upon them Allah did not oblige for them to practice. And despite of them making obligatory upon themselves, they still were not able to fulfill it. That's the reason why you'll find that the majority of them who practice celibacy, if you look into the history, what do? They either touching little kids, or they're getting married behind the closed doors secretly, or they're what? Hiring prostitutes. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that in that book. That was an innovation. They had innovated in their religion that Allah did not make for them to what? To practice. They did it for themselves. And despite of that, they still wasn't able to fulfill it. That's why if you look at the history of those what? Of those people, what do? Like we said, they either touching little kids, or they getting married secretly, or they what? Or they involve in prostitution, where they're hiring prostitutes. And that statement of that ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, actualized. You see it clearly. Because all you got to do is look in the history of what happened with them. Right, everyone? All right, we'll stop there. Any questions about the lesson? وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. You ready?